Houston. How do you feel about Houston? Like Houston, we have a problem.
The Rockets. We're live.
We're live. Like, comment, and subscribe.
He did. He didn't tell us. Hey,
subscribe to the like button. You can subscribe, and then you can actually like every single video, and you can press the notification bell, and then it'll tell you when you can go and like and subscribe, and also comment. And all of this is free. All of this is a fantastic deal that'll embrace your life and make it a better thing. So just do it. Like, comment, and subscribe. So you just go over, like then you comment, which does imply typing, but you don't have to really say much. You can just say awesome video. All right, just every time. Like
Matt and Cedric, you guys did great. Subscribe. You look great. We appreciate you. Everything you do. Give us great reviews. Nothing negative. If you have to, that's okay.
No.
I'll just make Cedric read it.
If you hate us, if you think we are the worst, tell us. Go out of your way and tell us. All right, we need that engagement. A like is just as good as a dislike. All right.
That's true.
Like because we like feeling good, all right? But still.
Chrissy T tells us it's the other way around. But hey, you know what? We do like the engagement. If you think there's a be improved, you let us know. We probably won't change it, but just let us know. We like you guys giving us your thoughts. We know there are a lot of you out there watching us all at once. We appreciate that. Let's keep building it, baby. More people need to know about these books. More people need to know about success. More people need to know about Cedric because he's going to be big one of these days. Let me tell you. I'm going to be writing the coattails.
We are going to be big. What if this becomes like the biggest podcast that ever happened? When this becomes
it will.
That ever happened. When we are the next Joe Rogan. And
it has already. Thanks to Chrissy
T.
diverged
from books. But it'll still be the greatest podcast.
That's right. Speaking of books, let's get into at least give a little prelude so they know what we're going to be talking about today. Today we read chapters 5 and 6 from Outliers, the success story of success. Chapter 5 was 3 lessons from Joe Flom. Joe Flom was a very successful Jewish lawyer from New York, from Skaden. I believe they said they have something like 23 offices worldwide. They have over 2,000 attorneys. That's incredible. Incredibly successful. The way they got there, we'll talk about it. Pretty incredible. And then the second one, they were talking about Harlan, Kentucky, and talking about a lot of family feuds, a lot of murders, a lot of murder trials, and how that may have come from their ancestors 200, 300, 400 years prior to them being there. So we'll talk about all that stuff. Cedric, I like the getup, man. You come from the streets of San Francisco or what?
No, this is a Seattle look. So see if you can see. I got a beanie on. I got my sport coat, so they know that like I got a sport. But then this shirt makes me homeless. This is amazing. I have a coffee mug, also Seattle-y. This is a Seattle look. That's what I'm going for today. I was like, I want to be Seattle, circa homeless, or potentially tech billionaire. 92, circa 1992. That's what this look is.
That's what the mug's for. Tech look.
Yeah, the mug's class. The mug people are just like, oh, okay, this guy.
I'm sure a lot of the people on the streets in San Francisco would say the same.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys are all big tech. They're Silicon Valley. Those are the big guys. That's what they'll tell you.
I met a guy. How many homeless people were actually millionaires? Like almost everyone I talked to. Always, like
that's what they tell you.
Like how hard is it to become a millionaire? Every time you become a millionaire, you become homeless.
You become homeless.
Every time
it's
I've
tough,
talked to homeless,
man.
they were always a millionaire.
It's a tough trade-off. It's a really tough trade-off because on the one hand, you become a millionaire, which is fantastic. You're so elated. You got all these endorphins pumping. But then on the other side, you got to know that it's going to happen one of these days. You're going to become homeless. I mean,
yeah. It's like literally like every homeless person, they're like up there shooting up heroin, meth, whatever. I don't fucking know. They're like, oh fuck. When I owned Apple, when me and Steve Jobs were doing cocaine together.
back in the day, that's what they do, man. Oh man, so Cedric,
it would be cool to talk to one that was actually a millionaire at one point.
Oh, you know what? Actually, they do have some pretty incredible stories. Not that I would necessarily recommend going to
they're
the
just
seedier
dark.
parts of San Francisco or Seattle or what have you and pick up a conversation. But if you do find yourself out there on the streets and you do talk to someone, you can have some pretty interesting conversations. Cedric, I told you when I was a security guard out in San Francisco, I had some conversations. Did I ever tell you about Smoke the Wizard?
No, I think you might have at one point, but tell me about Smoke the Wizard.
You want to know about Smoke the Wizard?
Wow.
So I used to work for a company that was based out of Tiburon? No, Sausalito. They're based out of Sausalito. We did work all over San Francisco. Nice. Yeah, oh yeah. And we did work all over San Francisco, Oakland, etc. And I worked for this one lounge in downtown San Francisco. And I would stand outside from maybe 8 to about 3 in the morning. And sometimes it'd be pretty quiet, but you'd always have your people walking around. Some of the people living on the streets would be walking around. And for the most part, I mean, it's a very unfortunate situation. I don't know if we've talked about this in the past. Obviously, the homeless problem is definitely a huge issue. And it's something that is going to take a lot more than just one person to fix. Right? It's going to take you, me, and a whole community to fix something like that. And unfortunately, whatever's going on in California, I wish things were getting better, but it doesn't seem like things are getting better. I think we talked about this. I think we talked about this last time with Berkeley and how the camps were getting bigger and bigger. But anyway, so you see them, and the big thing, security, you want to keep a lot of people out from, who might be causing some kind of disturbances inside. And the best way to do that, unfortunately, is sometimes you don't necessarily engage so much with them. But I would have some talk, and we did have some great conversations. One of them, his name was Smoke the Wizard. And he came up, and he seemed like a pretty good guy, actually. He seemed like a really good guy. We were talking. He was saying, hey, I understand you're doing a great job, man. Thank you for standing out there and for doing a good job. I said, hey, thanks, man. And he reached out, and I said, oh, no, that's okay. I don't need to shake your hand. But he introduced himself. He said, oh, well, what's your name? I said, oh, my name's Matt. He says, oh, I'm Smoke the Wizard. And I said, oh, Smoke the Wizard. And he said, yeah. He said, I was reading you, and I was reading your aura. He said, you look like the kind of guy who has a gray aura. And I said, a gray aura? And I was looking down at my, gray work uniform, and I was saying, well, what makes you say I have a gray aura? He said, oh, I don't know. You seem like you're kind of a middle of the road guy, and you're shooting off this aura to me. And I said, okay. And he said, I got a white aura, like Gandalf the White, or like, I forget the guy's name, but he was talking about how, he could see visions and he could see into the past to when he was, getting baths by his grandmother, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just a real interesting conversation. Now, the unfortunate thing is I ended up shaking his hand, and I did catch something from him that made me think twice about shaking people's hands off the street. But here we are.
That's how you get AIDS.
That's how you end up there.
I love how you told me your AIDS story. You told everybody. No kidding. Matt doesn't have AIDS.
So Cedric, what were we up to today, man? You said you went skiing?
Yeah, went skiing. Went with one of my buddies, Logan. Went skiing. Went with one of my buddies, Logan. It was good. I only skied like once so far this season. Also, I got a flat tire. I was gonna ski yesterday, and then when I went to leave, I got a fucking flat tire, and then so I couldn't ski. Like
in the snow. You got a flat tire in the snow up in Washington.
No, I got a flat tire because like rolling on a nail or hit something. And my car, I was like driving to go skiing, and I didn't have like no tire pressure lights on or anything, but it was kind of driving a little weird. And I like pulled off, I pulled over after driving like 2 miles or something. And I was like, looked fine. Drove, it was worse. But then I looked up where my tire store was. Also, pro tip: be in an area that actually has like bad roads and like real snow conditions, and like tires are important to you. And it is nice to go to a tire store because they'll like repair it and stuff. Like I've gotten plenty of tires repaired or replaced. So just drove there, dropped it off. Took them like 4 hours because they were like slammed. I guess. And so
Sounds like a fun day. This all happened today when you were trying to ski?
that was yesterday. It was yesterday. So it kind of like
Oh, I was gonna say, man, 4 hours. How'd you have any time to ski? Especially up there, your guys' time has got to be pretty quick with the sun up, huh? Sun up to sundown.
Night skiing. Yeah, they have night skiing. I was just gonna hang out with some like friends after, so like I was skiing like in the morning yesterday, but yeah, so that got me jacked up, so I didn't get to ski. But today I was skiing with my buddy Logan, and we like left at like 7:30. Got up there like right about when they were opening, like 10 minutes before they opened.
Does Logan know about this show? Be one of our Patreons?
I briefly mentioned it to him.
Oh yeah, so the answer is soon.
Yeah, but soon, yeah. I was trying to get him on rental properties. I was really like trying to pitch him. I was like, think about just buying assets, and then like when you have $1, that dollar makes more dollars. So then someday you don't have to have any dollars, and the dollars just make more dollars.
Investment. Isn't that something? Everyone wants to work for money, or at least everyone has the understanding that you get a job and then you work for money, and if you're hourly salary, whatever, you're making money for the amount of time you put in. But if you invest, you're making money without having to work for it. If it's a good investment. You know, obviously there's a lot more. You got to put in a lot of work to make sure your investment is good. But isn't that an interesting concept? But it's weird. It's almost like either people don't know about it or they're almost afraid of it. But I mean, what are your thoughts, man? Don't you think everyone should be investing?
Well, I think it's just, I would say people are afraid and they think it's more complex than it really is. Like, everybody makes it out like, oh, the stock market's so complex. It's like, you don't need to be some crazy person. It's like, you just put like 70% of your money into 3 index funds, like a S&P 500 one. That's exactly what I would do. If I was gonna, what would you do? If you were just going to give someone like this basic advice, what would you tell them to do?
What would I give them?
Yeah, like if you're just going to give them basic investing advice, what would you tell them to do?
Oh, you know what? So I had a buddy, Ryan, who we stayed with out in Austin. So he was mentioning he was considering investing. But what's going on is he's working currently until about March. He does a lot of social service, group bonds. Yeah, group homes. He works with kids in group homes, but he called it group bonds once. We thought that was pretty funny. So he does a lot of social services. And he's been saving up a lot of money because he's been living at home. He moved back from Austin. He moved back to Petaluma. And he is currently saving up a lot of money so that he can go travel out to Europe and live off of that money, going to, what are those places called in Europe? A hostel. You know the hostels?
You know what Ryan should do? Is Ryan should just wait 3 years, 4 years, buy like a couple of investment properties and other, not fucking the Petaluma, obviously, because it's expensive, but on other places. And then if he wants to go live in hostels, he really only needs to be making like $2,000 a month once he's out there.
Yeah,
any money.
Well, he's trying to say that you can go out there and you can make some money from the hostels if you do some work for them. But I'm getting a little aside. I'm getting
Europe to then have a job and work 40 hours a week.
I don't know. I don't know. You know what? Everyone's got their own way. I imagine it'll work for him. The way he probably explained it, maybe I didn't take it in fully the way he was describing it, but he sounded pretty confident. I mean, he just wants to find himself because he wanted to get into therapy. He wanted to, be a therapist for people and help people out. And then he kind of had the realization that, you know what, even though I had that initial thought and I still do want to help people, this might not be the way I'm going to proceed with. And I said, you know what, if that's the way you feel, man, then go ahead. There are plenty of ways you can help other people out. But that's a little aside. So he was asking about investing, and he was saying that he's going to go after March. He's going to do a road trip through the South, and then he's going to plan on going to Europe, hopefully sometime next year if the Rona stuff kind of dies out. So, he was asking about investing, and I was telling him how it works. And I said, look, for you, I understand you don't want to lose all that money that you've been saving up. I said, so what you could do is you could find a bond, you could find an ETF, you could find something that pays out, something that's not going to go up or down. I said, you invest in that and you get either your monthly or quarterly payments. And that way, you're at least making some money on the side. Because if you leave that in a bank account that doesn't have any interest, doesn't accrue any interest, then you're not making any money. It's just sitting there. But you can put it at the very least, at the most conservative, you can make some money off of it depending on what you put it in. So that's what I was telling him. I said, you know what? If I were you, I would just put in something that doesn't go up or down. And, maybe it pays you every month or quarterly and just do that. But he's still a little against it. So maybe people are a little against investing. That's what kind of gets me thinking that.
Yeah, they are. I mean, people are wary of it and they feel like they can lose a lot of money. I mean, even in the worst case scenario, as long as you don't have a really dumb portfolio, it's like the most you can lose 30%. So if you kind of go into it like, hey, the most I could lose is 30%. And you know how much you could probably make? Like 100%. Like a couple of years to make 100%. It's like
well, they do say that the more you're willing to risk, the more you're willing to lose. So the higher percentage you're willing to lose generally can turn into the higher percentage of gains. But that does depend on what you're investing in.
Even still, like that's like the penny stocks, like the people that are penny stock day trading. If you pick like an S&P fund, like that's just pegged to the S&P, and like a small cap fund that's pegged to small cap, and like China, because you can get some that's pegged to China, and then you pick 3 stocks that you think are good, and that's your portfolio. Like that'll perform fine.
Starbucks.
Like you would just be like, well, I think Tesla, GE, and Exxon are great stocks.
Dude.
The other 3, you got 6 things, and that's what you do.
So Tesla. So I've told you about, people. My buddy is saying, "Oh, don't buy Tesla. It's gonna go down. Short it." I said, "No. Elon Musk knows what the hell he's doing. Tesla's going to do good." And it was this constant argument. And then finally, after the Rona stuff started, Tesla is skyrocketing, and then it quintupled, right? But like an idiot, I didn't invest in it. And then after it split, I bought a share as it was at its high the day it split. And then it went down, and then it kind of sat there. And I said, I might as well sell it, invest in something else. And now it's up to like $700. I just can't win, man. I knew, it's a good one, but I guess that's investing, right? You can't win them all.
If hindsight was 2020, you just like there's fucking options out there that if you would have entered into them with like $700, probably made like fucking $100,000. Like it was just such a stupid option. Like there's options like that all the time that never actually get executed. Or
if you knew the future, Cedric. Precognition. We talked a little bit about that with that Steel and Fire stuff. Maybe we should look more into precognition. If that's possible to use that to predict the future of stocks, that would be pretty beneficial.
Now you're talking about magic. Are you a magic? Are we gonna start doing spells?
That's what investing is. Because one day your money's there, and the next, and it's gone. And it's gone. Yeah.
All that stuff made people feel like they're just gonna lose their money. And I think what had happened was there was all that stuff in 2008 and all that, and people were like, "Oh, you make all this investing and shit," and then they invested lots of money. But if you look at it, they only lost like 30%. I mean, obviously there are a lot of people who invest in dumb stuff, but if you invested like a reasonable amount of reasonably,
and you know what, the biggest thing that people don't think of, the one thing that because when I first started, it's definitely scary. If the stock goes down however much, you could say, "Oh, I'm going to sell it, and then when it hits the bottom, I'm going to reinvest, and then I'm going to make more money." Well, you could do that. That is, but first of all, you're never supposed to catch a falling knife, right? Because you're going to get hurt. And by that, I mean that you're never supposed to sell if you bought it and it's going down. If you sell it, you don't know when it's going to bottom out. So as soon as you sell it, it could immediately price hike. It could immediately go back up. And after that happens, then you took a loss and you're losing out on all these gains that you could have. So, there's that. But like I was saying, the biggest thing that people don't think about is you don't lose your money until you sell. So if you keep that money in there, it's still going up and down. It's still going up and down by percentages, by how many cents going up.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Just a side fact on the loss.
No, go ahead.
You can even write off. It's a small amount. You can write off about $1,300 in losses from portfolio. But the fun fact about that $1,300 in loss is, let's say you had a really good year and you don't want to fucking sell shit because you don't want to pay money in capital gains. But you had like 2 turds. Everybody has a turd. You go sell that turd. Fuck it. You can actually go sell the turd.
Not me.
Go right off that $1,500 that you lost on the turd. Wait 30 days and then go buy the stock again.
You know, that's pretty big. So
and that's 100% legal. You
so
have to wait 30 days.
So Cedric, because this is a book, because this is a show where we talk about books. So this may be one we look at in the future. This is one that I really like when I was first getting into stocks. No, that's Stealing Fire. That's a good one too. Chrissy T, what's going on?
Yeah, what's happening, Chris?
Leave and disconnect. How's it looking now? Can you see me? Should be good. Oh boy. Chrissy T, how'd you like our conversation? You taking notes? Are you? Chrissy T, don't lie to me. You are not taking notes. Don't lie to me, Chrissy T. I know you. But look, Chrissy, you don't understand how valuable some of this stuff we're saying. The whole point of our conversation here, and the whole point of us wanting to put this stuff on YouTube and spread it, is because we see.
Why can't I see Matt?
You can't see me? Yeah, you were sideways.
What is this? This is so weird.
Is
It's
it
like
locked?
now it's only showing. Now
Is
it's
it
like
locked?
only showing you.
Who?
Oh, there it is.
Am I on there? I should be on here.
Yeah, no, it was just being weird. It's just like me not understanding it. No, it's fine. Stuff happens. Shit happens. Ooh.
Chrissy T. A lot worse?
Our fans, our raving fans, are okay with us.
How are we looking now? Wi-Fi, such a big thing. Chrissy T, what you should do is you should get Cedric. What are those called? The cords that we were talking about?
Oh, an Ethernet cable?
You should get an Ethernet cord. You should.
You can just buy a really long one.
Both my housemates use them.
They make like 200-foot ones, and you can just buy one and connect it to it.
Oh, you know what? No, I got to say what I was saying because it's very important.
Kids love the wireless now. There's wires.
No, look.
For wireless.
The kids, man. I feel so old. Chrissy T is helping us out here, and he's like, "Oh, transfer this to this Google account." I'm like, Chrissy, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. I'm old. No, technology is just advancing so fast now. Oh boy. Yeah, I would think so.
This might be on my end. Stream, give it a sec.
Hey, we're back.
I do appreciate our individual fan. If you have any friends, which I know you do, you're really popular. You're probably Brad Pitt. So Brad, really, Mr. Pitt, please have more people. Just shout us out on your social media. I know that it's Brad Pitt. When you have a feeling,
Mr. Pitt, you're a good guy. We appreciate you. Again, like we said in the beginning, give us your thoughts, give us your comments. We probably won't respond to them because we don't have our YouTube pulled up right now. But we do appreciate you, and we appreciate the time you put in. And that's huge. No one else appreciates the time that you put in, that anyone puts in. It seems like everyone's so focused on themselves, but you know what? We appreciate it. We see it. We love it. Thank you. Now go spread this to everyone else so we get more viewers. No, so actually what I was saying, Cedric, before we kind of cut out, so I was telling Chrissy T, because I said, Chrissy T, are you writing notes on this investing stuff that we're talking about? And he said, oh, yeah, I am. I said, Chrissy T, don't lie to me. I know you're not writing notes. But he should. He should, Cedric, because what's the whole reason why we're making this podcast, this YouTube streaming thing, whatever you want to call it? What's the whole point?
I don't know. For me, it's just like it's a good chat with you, and it's just good to have someone to bounce new ideas off of, and grow our learning to help aid in like everything that we want to accomplish in our life.
So Cedric, it's not about you and me. It's not about me and you. It's not even about Chrissy T as much as Chrissy T thinks it's about him.
It's about the world.
It's about the people watching. The whole reason why we're doing this is because, yes, we're reading these books so we can better benefit ourselves, obviously. But we're live streaming this. We're showing this because we see all these people out there who want to be the best, who want to be better, who want to be successful. And the whole reason why we're streaming all this stuff is so that you guys can be successful. You read books, the best, we were talking about investments. The best investment you can make is invest in a book. Buy a book. These books are what? Anything from $2 to $15, $30. Or you can get Audible, you can get any of these, Audible apps where they're reading the book to you. Maybe when you're driving, if you have to drive to work, you listen to it on your way to work. And you can learn so much. That's going to benefit you so much. And they say money is power. They say if you have a lot of money, you have a lot of influence, you have a lot of power. That's not true. The most powerful thing is knowledge. Knowledge is power. Because if you have knowledge, you can gain money. If you have knowledge, you can gain social influence. You can do whatever you want. You have knowledge.
Yeah. Just like Chrissy T.
Just like Chrissy T. So Chrissy T, pick up your notebook, start writing this stuff down.
Yeah, we're really also doing this for Chrissy T.
We are doing it for Chrissy T. He didn't realize it. I mean, we're telling him now. That's what's going on. But
Chrissy
so hey,
T,
you know what?
The other day. So here's what you need to do. You can go work in the oil field. If you bust your ass for 4 years, you probably get about $200,000 in cash. Then you go out and buy a bunch of rental properties. Or you start your own construction. Whatever you want to do, Chrissy T. But that's what you go do. You don't even go to college. You just work a really sucky job in a zillion hours and save a bunch of money. And then you go into rental properties. You'll be 22, doing good.
Could you imagine? I imagine now. I think, God, what if I started investing when I was in high school? What if I started investing then? I'd have had so much more experience to where I could have made a ton of money. Which goes into the book, which goes into the chapters, which we have to talk about.
You need on it. So there's a billionaire out there. He made like a bunch of money in like hedge funds and stuff, but basically he wants to give every person $6,500 roughly, and at the time of their birth. And by age 65, with $6,500 and 65 years of compounding interest with no additional payments made, you should be roughly at $1 million. And the reason why that's such a crazy time horizon compared to like everything else is because it's exponential growth. Most of those things take you investing at like 20, 18, something like that, and they kind of take away that first 18, 20, 25 years. This is literally like zero. You started zero, you go to 65. So
you can make some
I'm
money.
curious how that would actually work. Like, I'd love to hear some more economists talk about that, because it's like, I wonder how it would affect the market, because it's just weird. But I don't know. That's kind of.
Well, you know what? We'll make that our mission to read one of those books. We're gonna have to read some books on the economy. We should actually probably read. I heard about some books on some of the crashes in the past. I think that might be a good book to read. Maybe not next. I know we're gonna read some stuff on marketing, but we should definitely read some books on the economy and how macro trends have affected some of the stuff on a micro level and vice versa. I think that'd be a really good idea, especially if you want to get into real estate, because I was talking to a realtor who said, you know, a lot of realtors only pay attention to micro trends. And by that, they mean they only pay attention to what's going on in their, you know, local area. So they can tell you, yeah, well, you know, house prices are going up, the housing volume is going down, and this, and this. But what this guy was telling me is that if you look at a macro level, then you have that kind of precognition to see what's going to happen overall. So he could say, well, you know, actually, if you look overall and you ask that same realtor who told you there's low volume and higher cost, the higher cost is not going to change. But ask that realtor how many homes have been sold over the span of the year. And he said, if that happens, they'll probably say, well, it's actually only maybe 2% down from what it was last year. And he was saying how over the years, it has gone up. The number of homes sold has gone up quite a bit, I think by 1 or 2% every year. And this year, I think it's staying pretty stagnant, if not a little less. So that's an interesting thing to think about. And that's why macro trends are pretty interesting to look at.
Yeah. I'm more on like the global side. Like when I think of economies and economics, like I love like a global sense, like very extremely high level.
Well, then that's very macro.
Country dealing with country and understanding like where they're like, you know, best suited and that sort of stuff. That's always what's really interested me. Some of the more micro and small markets like that are not interesting, but it's just it's so cool to me where it's like, well, because X, Y, and Z, they're really good at producing wheat in Venezuela and all these other things. So then they trade with these guys, and then that does this and that, like more of those connections. They get a very high level.
Yeah. Cedric, dude, we got to get into this book, man. We got to start talking about chapter 5, 3 lessons from Joe Flum. So I know that you really wanted me to read this. Before we talked last time on that last stream, Cedric said, hey, when we agreed we were going to talk about today, did we say we were just going to do those 2 parts of the Trouble with Geniuses, or do we get into Joe Flum? And I hadn't read the Joe Flum stuff, but Cedric was really excited about it. I can see why.
Yeah.
I can see why.
So what are your thoughts?
Chrissy T's calling me on my phone. I don't understand why he doesn't send me a text.
Just talk to Chrissy T.
Okay, you keep them. I'm going to mute myself. Hold on.
No.
Talk to everyone.
You got to leave it on. So now no one knows what Chrissy T says. So, hey guys, this is my segment of the show where I run the show.
Okay, so with
just,
my potato of a computer.
I don't know.
Potato of a computer.
Going with this. But yeah, you should go learn how to ski. I think it's fun. I mean, I think you should really just go do something. And lower the bar. That's always been one of my biggest things. You need to lower the bar. People think like, oh, well, I need to do this, I need to do that, and for that to be great. It's like, if you want to go surf, if you don't have money for a surfboard, you don't have money for anything, but you live by the beach.
Cedric, stop talking. Hold on. Christian said his computer froze, so now we're stuck in like a loop. Can they hear us? They can hear us?
They can hear us, they can see you. But when the time comes, I cannot end the stream.
You can't end the stream?
No, you have to do it.
I have to do it. You mean for my YouTube?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's fine. I can do that.
I was just letting you know. And
okay.
I can't do anything.
You can't? Okay, well, that's okay. I like having all the power. Cedric, you and I, power back in our hands, baby.
Okay.
Back in our hands. Bills, baby. They clinched the division, baby. Hell yeah, baby.
20 years.
Woo! 25 years.
Yep, you've been counting.
When the time
I haven't been along that
if
way.
you ask me to pull up a link, I
Since the
can't
day
do
you were born, you
Which
have been
link?
counting,
You asked
or
me
waiting
to
for the next
something
build.
up for the sake of this conversation.
Okay. All right.
So
So that's okay. That's okay.
If your downstream stops, I'm sorry. But
Charge it then. Plug it in.
sure.
So how's it gonna die?
I mean, if the stream dies.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. We'll make the most of what we can do here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The goal is to
People
try
enjoy
and
us
keep
anyway.
trying.
So, yeah. All right.
Look,
Bye, Chris
People are
T.
gonna
We
look
love
back
you.
on these and be like, "Wow, how did these fools get to 1 million subscribers?"
Because we're great. Because everyone
Yeah.
loves us.
And we get better. I think the key thing is just about improvement.
It's all about
especially
improvement.
talking
And the
about this
music
for,
helps a lot.
10,000 hours. So
10,000 hours. It will be
Yep.
so awesome. So cool.
just get better.
So
at
chapter 5. So chapter 5 and Joe Flom, before Chris T so rudely interrupted me for such nonsense. So, Joe Flom, Cedric. Who is Joe Flom? Why is this guy important?
So basically, Rags to Riches story. It's talking about Jewish people and how they became what is it, like lawyers and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
really, it's talking about Joe Flom.
Specific. They were talking about the
Flom.
specific individuals who had Jewish heritage. They were Jewish themselves, and they had become incredibly successful lawyers in New York in, I believe, the 1960s.
Yeah.
I believe that was the time frame.
Yeah.
And so,
And-
how did he fit into it?
Yeah, so he just, what was it? He didn't go to like the right law school, or is that what it was? I'm trying to remember exactly why he wasn't able to get into that specific thing, or what was it? I'm trying to remember.
So he
Was
did
he
not
Jewish?
go to the top of the top. He didn't
That's
go
what
to
it
the
was.
cream of
Yeah.
the crop college. He was smart though. I mean, he was an incredibly smart dude. And they actually talked about in the first lesson Alex Bickle. He said Alexander Bickle, who was, I think he had a very similar, I think he was in law too, he's an attorney as well. He was also Jewish. He had a lot of similarities with Joe. Both of them had gone to high school, were incredibly smart, were the top of their class, were the top of their families, their brothers and sisters. They went to colleges that weren't necessarily the best, I guess, if we're remembering correctly. But they were still so successful. And the problem is when they got to these law firms in New York, they were told, or at least Alex was specifically, they talked about in the book, he was told that, hey, you know what? We are so excited. You're doing so well. Given your antecedents, and that was a word he used a lot, antecedents. I'd recommend anyone who's watching this look up the word antecedents so you know what this guy is saying. He said, due to your antecedents, we cannot hire you. But you know what? You're doing great, and we are so happy you're doing so good.
Yeah.
Now, given that and what happened to them, they joined Skaden. Was it Skaden or Skadden?
I don't know. I think it was Scatton, but I mean, just a small startup firm, where they were mostly doing, it really, what did he say? Anything that would come through the door, but they ended up
Litigation.
specializing in like litigation,
Hostile
which, generally
takeovers.
speaking, corporate lawyers didn't do. Also, so people understand what a lot of like lawyers do, is it like most of a lawyer's job usually is to file paperwork, because there's a lot of like government and certain regulations where like the thing needs to be reviewed by a lawyer, or the lawyer needs to have an opinion on it, and so that's the vast majority of what they do. It's like corporate paperwork for buying and selling things.
A lot of fun.
And hiring
Sounds like a lot of fun. Pencil pusher.
But so, yeah, it's like the dumbest. It's literally like the dumbest job. Like, unless you want to be a litigator, but you don't make really any money in actual litigation. Like, you make money in suing people, but that's just like winning the lottery. You're trying to find some person that's been eating asbestos for freaking 20 years, and there's another 1,000 people that have too.
Well, first
you
of
get them
all,
all, and
you've been eating asbestos
Then
for
you get
20
40%
years.
whatever you can get.
You're not there after 20 years, Cedric. How have you been eating asbestos that long? But no, I see what you're
Well,
saying.
it's a low death. I mean,
But-
people, have you ever heard of the town of Asbestos?
No, enlighten me.
So there's a town that is called Asbestos. I want to say, I can't remember where it is. I think it's like up, like in like central and up. I don't know, like
Very,
Minnesota,
very
some
colorful history.
Yeah,
Cedric.
well, no, I can't remember exactly what it is,
Imagine.
but basically there's a town that is called Asbestos, and it's called Asbestos because there's a lot of asbestos mines by there, and asbestos
Oh.
itself is not bad. Asbestos, like, it's bad if you breathe it in. That's where it's bad. If it stays
So
in
it
like
is
a
bad.
blue kind of form, it's fine. But it's once you breathe it in. But in asbestos, there was so much fucking asbestos here. Like, there would be like clouds of it. Like, your whole car would just be dusted in asbestos. Like, there's pictures of people like riding on cars, like thick dust of asbestos everywhere, the whole town, because it was right next to a mine. For it. And then like everybody got cancer, and it was a whole thing. And terrible thing ensued. And
So positive thought. So basically all that can't. So lawyers, you're saying is very similar. Litigation, at least, is very similar. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I don't know exactly where I was going with that. I've always loved. I'm a big John Grisham fan. If anybody's read a John Grisham book, would recommend. Great,
Maybe
but there's
we can-
something so
maybe we can
cool
tackle one
about
of those.
just finding some company that's screwing people over, and then just sticking it to them, hard, and then you get 40% plus.
Yeah.
fees.
Well, what do
That's
these guys get? They got some like 20 to 30% for litigation for their work. This was down the
litigation
line,
is
though.
all
This is
billable
after they
hours.
became very successful.
Oh, those guys? No, they just, what was the flat rate?
Oh, yeah. They
They
just
could
said,
get way
"Oh,
more.
well, give us 20 million," because they were talking about Kmart, right? Or was that BlackRock?
I think it was Kmart. They
No,
are
but
black.
Kmart paid BlackRock.
Yeah.
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 Assets. That's another company.
Yeah, but I guess
So-
going back to the thing. So the whole point,
Yeah.
or if you want to do it, but so
No,
the whole
go ahead.
point is, so basically there's this guy. He didn't go to the top law school. He wasn't completely rich, super rich or anything. He didn't have a whole bunch of connections. His dad had been like a whatever lawyer, everything. And so not necessarily like all his cards are stacked against him, but certain things aren't necessarily working out the best in his favor. And so he goes to work for a small firm. And at the small firm, all they do is anything that comes to the door. But one of the key things is litigation, because at the time, companies did mostly corporate law, and so they were just basically pencil pushing, just doing small things. And so his firm specialized in litigation, which ended up actually setting up for him to be extremely successful, because soon it moved into litigation being the most popular type of law, which he was already really good at and already had a lot of experience. So then he was able to capitalize on that because he had already put in a bunch of time and built a good client base. And then once it became the most popular thing, he was the guy that you'd call to handle that for you. And then from there,
So he had the 10,000 hours of work, sort of. He had the 10,000 hours, figuratively, of work and experience in this field before the whole world, it seemed, turned into really wanting litigation and hostile takeover lawyers. That's quite a position to be put in.
Yeah. And I would say, I don't know, who knows whether he got the 10,000 hours or not, but yeah, definitely he had all this experience, whether it was 10,000 hours or not. He had a bunch of experience and was able to then capitalize on the opportunity that was afforded to him. And if he wouldn't have ever had that experience and put in the work and put in the effort, then he would have not been able to capitalize on that opportunity. It would have been the same opportunity regardless. So that was cool. I thought it was really good. I think another point that he made that was kind of cool, like just kind of stuck in my head, is someone was talking to him about like the firm he ended up founding, and he was promoting people to partners. And someone was like, we're hiring all these new graduates, like how are we gonna promote all of them to partners? He's like, we'll just have 2,000 lawyers.
Yep.
There's like a certain number of lawyers per partner, and like it's just a hierarchy, like literally a pyramid. So I was like, that, it's just kind of a good mentality. It's like, well, how are we gonna be able to do it? Well, we'll just get bigger. We'll just be big enough to support it.
We're just gonna have to be more successful. We're gonna have to grow and grow and grow. Is that the business mentality?
Yep. And then what was the other guy? The apron guy.
So that's the third lesson. Do you want to talk about the second one with Maurice Jinklo and Mort? Mort Janklow, his son.
Which one was that? Oh, I'm trying to remember.
Well, so let's clarify the main point of the first lesson. The main point was that at first, Joe Flom, if Bickle was a part of the company, I'm gonna have to research this because I kind of seem to jump around in the book a little bit. But Skaden, so they were the group of attorneys who started up their own company because they were told by these top-notch law firms, hey, you can't join us because of your antecedents. You're doing great. You're a very smart guy, but because of your antecedents, we can't take you, unfortunately. You know, they wanted those Nordic-looking guys who were clean-cut with blue eyes, fair complexion, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. And those guys, they didn't fit it. So they didn't take them, and they gave them the work that, as you described earlier, with the pencil pushing, you compared it to all that cancer and asbestos, which doesn't sound fun at all. So if that's the case, I don't know if I'd want to work in this field. But doing all that work and going through all that adversity, that led to them becoming so successful that the author, Malcolm Gladwell, said there are pictures in his office of him shaking hands with Bill Clinton, with Bush, you know, and now there's 23 offices all over the world, 2,000 total attorneys, because they went through all of that hard time, and when the opportunity reared its head, they took the opportunity, and they capitalized on it. They had the most experience. They were fantastic. So what does that tell you, Cedric? What lesson do you get from that?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things. It's interesting to see like what sticks out to you and what doesn't. The antecedents thing and all that was very much just kind of you know, whatever for me. And like what really stuck out was just his like grind and his you know, really the like him capitalizing on his opportunities, which was what stuck out to me. But basically, what it tells me is that shit's gonna happen, and that's not the point. The point is you need to be doing something. You need to be somehow moving something along. So then that hopefully you can capitalize on some sort of opportunity that hopefully, I mean, whatever opportunities come to you. So it's like, because he didn't just like give up on being a lawyer or do whatever and kept like, I'm just going to keep going, whatever. It's like, oh, they don't want it.
Even though it was tough, he still kept pushing on. And again, when the opportunity reared its head, he capitalized.
Yeah.
And he's supposedly the most successful lawyer in that field, according to Malcolm Gladwell, is what it sounded. So that's cool. Second lesson, when they were talking about Maurice Janklow and Mort Janklow. Cedric, would you be able to talk about this for a little bit? I got to actually step out, use the restroom real quick. I'll be right back. Is that cool?
What can jog my memory? I'm trying to remember what the
unprofessional.
So Maurice Janklow, he was a very smart dude. He was from an immigrant family. By the way, Joe Flom, Alex Bickle, both their families, their parents were immigrants. That's very important. They were all immigrants back in like 1911. And their sons turned into very successful people. So that's very important that they were all immigrants. But Maurice Janklow, he was the smartest kid in his family, and his brothers and sisters. He went to New York. He tried to capitalize on it, but he went there when the Great Depression hit.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then Mort was an incredibly successful guy. So anyway, please talk about that when I get back. Jog my memory on what all you said, and then we'll talk about it. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no, you're good. So basically, this portion of the book, it's talking about how one of the reasons why Joe Fromm and all that, like one of the big differences was timing, and how Joe Fromm came up at the best time possible, essentially. And they highlight this other guy who basically became a lawyer, moved to New York City, tried to do all this stuff right as the Great Depression hit. So when he was going to go do this, he literally was doing a job that made negative money. Like no one needed law services at the time. So basically, the guy was screwed. And one of the biggest things was just the timing of it. The timing of it, like what he wanted to do, didn't make sense. It just wasn't the best time to be a lawyer. It wasn't the opportunity that people had. And so the point that Malcolm Gladwell makes is that basically because Mort Janklow was born at the wrong time, he was not able to be successful in what he did. but then it's like someone like Joe Frong was able to be Fron was able to be extremely successful in what he did because he was able to put in all his time before the actual opportunity happened. Whereas the other guy, he didn't have the opportunity. There was probably some different opportunity or some other place he should have put his effort that would have made a little more sense for the occasion. And something that needs to be noted in this book, I think, is it's talking about outliers. So it's talking about the extreme of the extreme. So when it defines success, it's talking about people who are already in it, who are already good. And I think that's something to note. It's not like saying like, oh, like we're talking about the lowest percentile. We're talking about already people that are already good. I just kind of highlighted the what was it? I'm trying to remember.
Maurice.
Yeah, just Maurice Janklow and how like he grew up in a different time. It was the Great Depression. It was the worst time to become a lawyer, and that whole thing.
Yep.
So,
yeah, it's got to be tough because he came from a situation where he was the smartest guy. Actually, I think Maurice's parents were the immigrants, and then Maurice was a second generation American citizen, and then Mort, his son, was a third generation. But at that point,
at the best time.
Yeah, because
what was it? It was
the
the garment worker thing. Yeah, it was the garment worker. They were garment workers, whatever. And so they worked in this thing, and then he learned all this stuff, and then he became a lawyer, and then he saw how hard his dad worked, and so he became a lawyer, and then at that point, then they were successful.
Yeah, and that's got to be tough to come into New York City to try to be successful right as Great Depression hits. He lost everything. I could see how that could definitely drive someone to not want to take risks.
Yeah.
You lose everything. That's got to be tough too, mentally. Maybe that's why people seem to have.
The Great Depression sounds like really, really hard. Like just so hard. If no one had any food, there's this YouTube channel. It's like I want to say the lady might have died. She was really old, but basically this lady was like a young child, but young enough where she could remember it. Not too young where she couldn't remember, but she was alive during the Great Depression. She does like cooking videos, and you just see what these people are eating, and it was terrible. Yeah, she's like out there like, yeah, she was like every couple days we'd have coffee.
Not cooking.
Yeah, I was like once a week we'd have coffee, and it just describes all these shitty foods they'd eat. And she's just like, this sounds terrible. It's just like flour and water like baked together. It's horrible.
Oh, well, you know what? People got to do what they got to do to survive.
Yeah, true.
Right? So, we unfortunately are not all allotted the same opportunities at all times. Maybe not from our families, maybe not by our time period, our generation, etc. Maybe that's the most important thing about this second lesson. Because Mort and his generation, he pretty much was set up because it sounded like they were comparing him to his father. They were pretty much identical. The only difference is Maurice was 30 years too early, 30, 20 years, however many years, too early. And then Mort was perfect timing. Things were growing exponentially. They had just gotten out of World War II. Everything was set up for him. So that's pretty big too. That's gotta be tough for people who were born in those time periods. Can you really blame them for the lack of success?
I would say no. I mean, some things it's like can you blame a farmer for like not for crops?
No, Chris P, we don't want it. Sweet.
Okay, so yeah, maybe speed up a little bit because it's kind of late. But yeah, so what is it? I guess I was gonna say you can't blame a farmer for a drought.
No.
But you can't blame a farmer for not sowing his seeds. So that's what I would say. It's like the guy still sowed the seeds of success, which I think is the key. Because I mean, he still did things to help his family, set him up, and do all that kind of stuff, teach them, so then they could learn from his own mistakes.
Yeah, it all ties in. He must have been a good parent.
Oh yeah,
he must have been a good parent because his son clearly became successful, even though his father had a really tough time with money, and he was talking about how he saw his father, say, hey, I'll take this dime for the bus, I'll take this other dime for this, and 50 cents for a sandwich. You can take the rest of the $2. That's got to be tough. Be tough. And that actually drove the son to be successful because he didn't ever want to deal with that. Which is why you talk to people who've come from situations like that, and once they have money, once they get there, they say, I'm never going back. I am never going back. And I would never want to go back myself. If I were in that situation, I would imagine, be the same thing. I'd imagine that's everyone. Who wants to live impoverished? No one. But unfortunately, some situations people are born into. That's just a harsh reality of what happens when it happens. So the question is, how does are those people doomed to let's see, how do I want to ask this question, because now this is going to get a little philosophical, kind of like our last conversation. So how do you help? Do you help those people? Is it possible for those people to get out of those situations if they aren't afforded the opportunities, if they haven't grown up in lifestyles or with families? Are they able to get out?
Well, the thing about this whole book is about outliers. It's specifically about people that do not fit the norm and are extremely crazy. So it's about what we can learn from those people, but then also understanding that these are the outliers. Because like what was his son's name? I can't remember. Mort. Yeah, Mort was very successful, and he's successful because of all XYZ different reasons. But there were a zillion other people that had way worse than him and who were also successful, and they were able to do it. And there were other people that weren't successful, had it really easy. And it's talking specifically about the outlier. So there were plenty of people below that outlier that did really well too. And it's just specifically talking about that 1 in a million. And that's really what's about. Which is hard to keep in mind because that's kind of his point. Like, it's like, what can we learn from these people? But you don't want to emulate them.
But is it possible?
Don't want to emulate them. It's very hard to replicate like what they did. It's like you have to figure out.
Well, it's not really hard. It's impossible. If you don't come from their background, how are you supposed to replicate exactly what they did? You'd have to manipulate pretty much everything about your life to get to that situation. It's impossible. So it's how you take in. This actually leads into the third lesson with the garment business. You take what you know, and you take what others have done to be successful. You've learned, hey, this person used this skill to become successful. Is it possible to meld that with what I'm already good at, in a sense, to become successful? And then the answer, more often than not, is yes. Okay. Take what you're good at, utilize the skills and mentality that someone else had from whatever their background might be, and become successful off that. But you have to look for the opportunities. You have to look for those opportunities to be successful, to utilize your skills. Right?
Yeah. No, I definitely say that. And then also kind of like branching off on that, because he always talks about the family and all that. Like, it's been a big theme of this. But I don't think it's necessarily like people should be like, well, I'm this, so it's this. It's like, that's not the point. The point is to figure out what you think you want to be and just decide that that's the way your family was. And because your heritage somehow, blah, 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 that's why you're so great at it. Like, and not completely, that's not totally the point. But I think some of it's about like kind of just finding that, like, well, because I was XYZ, that's why I'm already set up to have this work for me. Whether that's true or not, just believing that, like, hey, like, I already put in the time. I had like this family, this heritage, like all this stuff helped me to then better me for this scenario. Whether it's like the best fit or not, I think that there's something to be gained from that. And that's part kind of like the smaller point he makes.
And that's what helps you personally benefit. Yeah. So Cedric, what were they talking about in the third chapter? That's when third lesson of the fifth chapter. They were talking about the garment business with Louis and Regina Borgenik, correct?
Yeah, so basically there were Louis and Regina came over to America. They were from, you said Poland or something?
It seemed like they were from Poland. One of them was from Poland. I think someone was from somewhere else. We're really good at analyzing these books. Great memories.
Yeah, but basically they moved to America and they were trying to make money. And Louis had no money, so he comes first day. He has some family that already lives here, and he borrows some. He gets some herring on consignment, so some fish, and then goes upsells the fish in the street, and then makes like $6 or something, which for the time was a good amount of money. Yeah, nothing crazy, but probably close to a week's worth of work. So he did pretty well there. Really excited about it, but it takes him a long time. It could take all day, and So he like keeps working, keeps trying to figure out what his thing is, and he's selling this, on that, and eventually he figures out I need to like basically he's sitting down and he sees like all these garments and all these clothes, and he's like, wow, like that's saving so much because it's a win-win situation. It saves you a bunch of time. It actually really saves you money and you get a better product, and then they're able to make money, and it's a win-win situation. And he sees that as being a really awesome opportunity. But what he figured out is he needed to be selling something no one else was. That he needed to find a niche. So he was a salesman, like, so he's always out seeing people. So he just was looking for someone who had something or some garment or something that he had never seen before. And he sees this little girl who has an apron on, and he had never seen a child's apron. Went to go find one, could not find one. So then he went out and made his own child's aprons and then sold them. I think he made like $3 or something off the couple aprons he had made, but it wasn't many. But he sold them in like an hour or something, but substantially less time. So he's like, all right, I need to do this, and then reinvested, ended up growing that to a very, very wildly successful business, making all these different things and all this stuff. And
yeah,
what was that? That one was back to like the family and like where they were from or whatever. I'm trying to remember what the point of that one was.
So the point was because I believe they may have been Jewish as well, but where they were from, because when Lewis met Regina, they said that Regina had a clothing making industry, or not industry, but she had a little shop in her hometown over in Poland or wherever it was from, and she had it since she was 16. And that skill transferred over to America, because what Lewis was looking for, because he was using that push cart and he was trying to sell food and he was trying to sell these fish, but it wasn't seeming to work out for him, at least the way he wanted it to. You know, he wasn't making as much money as he wanted to, and with one kid already there and another one coming on, on the way, he said he needed a way to make more money. So he went around and he looked at shops and he saw that clothing was the way to go. It was a clothing revolution or something like that. And when he saw those aprons on the girls, yes, he decided to start making them, and they sold immediately. And so he learned quite a bit from that industry. He said that the garment making industry, they learned pretty much everything there is to know about running a business. He learned how to negotiate. He learned distribution. He learned the making of it. He learned, pretty much everything else that's needed for business, hiring workers, et cetera, et cetera. And he was able to teach his kids became successful, et cetera, et cetera. But the important thing is that Regina had already had that experience, and he had also had experience making clothes. And so when he found this opportunity in America to make clothes, he just capitalized on it. He already had those 10,000 hours, just like Joe Flom had those 10,000 hours of litigation work. He had a similar deal, and he capitalized on it incredibly. And that's why he was so successful. Another important thing I got from this, I don't know if you caught on, but the author, he brought up that autonomy, complexity, and clear relationship between effort and reward. He said those three things are very important for a business or for a company or for any kind of work. He said because those three things, especially that reward aspect of it, he said that could be more valuable than money itself. He said because you can work a job and make a lot of money at your job, but if it's not rewarding, if there's not enough use of creativity, complexity, whatever, you're probably going to hate your job. That's why people hate their jobs, because it's not rewarding enough for them. And that's why when we talk about all these people stuck in the rat race, that's probably why, because the job they're working isn't rewarding enough for them. There isn't enough complexity, autonomy, and that relationship. So in this garment making industry, there was plenty of that, plenty of those three objects or items, plenty of that for Lewis and Regina. And so for them, they were able to become incredibly successful because it was like a self-replicating cycle. They made money, then they bought more clothes, and through that whole cycle of
reinvestment.
Reinvestment into the business, they got the reward, and just using the creativity of making new clothes, etc., and that was enough reward for them. So Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like the money. The business is more than the business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I think that I agree with that. Like it's like people believe in intangibles and stories and things don't make sense.
Yeah.
People fight for a cause.
That don't make sense?
But
Or
yeah,
does
like
it make
generally,
sense?
like yeah, it does make sense because if you think about it from a solely like logical standpoint, you think that people would believe things that are like definitely just going to better them. It's like, oh, well, if I pay you this, that, and the other thing, people work really hard for like nothing, and it's just like the believing in an idea,
Mm-hmm.
so, like whatever that idea is. So, and it's not like necessarily a logical thing, but it's how everybody is, how I am, it's how people are.
Well, that's why people make such decisions that don't seem to make sense to us, right? That's why people make decisions that go against, because they say that the number one drive of any animal is to survive. And that's why people seem to make decisions that go against that innate drive to survive. Maybe they have an idea or a belief or something that drives them that doesn't involve surviving or doesn't involve power and money and having more money, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe that's where that comes from. Maybe there's some kind of change in creativity, maybe the creativity, complexity, maybe all of that is what really drives a person or an animal to keep going and to keep improving and keep growing and learning and becoming better. So maybe you need complexity. So I guess what you can take from that for anyone who's listening to this, you want to create a business, you want to become an entrepreneur. Becoming an entrepreneur, you got to come up with ideas constantly. I think, Cedric, you and I were talking about this. As an entrepreneur, you are constantly finding solutions to questions. You're constantly answering questions. That's pretty much what an entrepreneur is, right? Were we having that conversation?
I think so. Yeah, or just a successful person or anybody. I mean, it's just it's problem solving. You don't have to do anything when there's no problems. Like so, you only deal with problems because you don't do anything when there aren't problems.
Yep.
And even like you make an argument, oh, well, if you're ahead of the ball, even if you're ahead of the ball, you're fixing future problems, which means that's all you're worried about is problems, not like I mean, obviously you're working on solutions, but like that's what the job is. It's just like answering questions, fixing problems, moving on move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and the important thing about that, which not a lot of people may understand, which they should, is that human beings, we're not made to sit around and do nothing. That's why people die so young from obesity and all that stuff. It's not good sitting around. It's not good working yourself. They say the power of the mind, the power of belief is so strong. You might maybe bat an eye at that. You might say it's ridiculous. But really what it's saying is, I mean, we're creatures of learning. We are born. The first thing we do is we learn something. And we learn things until the day we die. So with that knowledge, we constantly need to be learning in order to have purpose. Our purpose comes from that learning of things in this world. And in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of finding answers to solutions, you have to constantly be looking for an answer to something. You have to constantly be looking to strive to be better, because if you don't, you're going to fall into a habit of sloppiness, of laziness. You're going to become obese if you don't eat, if you eat a lot, if you don't exercise. It's all related. It's all related. You got to be constantly moving forward. You have to be constantly be improving yourself. But the only way to do it is to be putting in the hard work and to, keep testing yourself, keep challenging yourself.
Oh yeah, it's crazy how much better you can get. It's just crazy to just keep working at it slowly but surely. It's like it's really hard to walk a mile, but it's really easy to take one step. And so if you take one step after another step, you're gonna walk a mile eventually.
Yep.
And then moving on to what is it, chapter 6 now? Is that what it is? 7?
Chapter 6. Well, I had in here, I thought we would throw in here, we have our philosophical thought of the day. I guess that all depends on how we're feeling. It is a Sunday night. I'm thinking what we are going to want to do is we're probably going to want to do middle of the day Sunday. We've got a little more energy and we've got a little more brain power. I mean, Monday's a pretty rough day. Get back to work. I don't know about you.
Yeah. We'll have to. Yeah, we'll figure out like scheduling and all that sort of stuff. Really, we just need to start earlier.
You start early. It's already
like I'm doing
10:30.
like at 5. Like
my
for
God.
the most part, I'm doing like 5 o'clock.
Yeah, if I wasn't golfing earlier today, I would have definitely liked to have gone earlier. But we'll just get into chapter 6. We'll call it a day, and then we'll fix it for Tuesday. So Tuesday, do you want to do 5 o'clock then?
Oh, tentative. Text me.
We can do 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's mostly just me finishing it to make sure I can get it done.
Yeah.
Book done. So
we're gonna have to be really productive. But anyway, that's also a conversation after this. Let's get into chapter 6. Chapter 6 was Harlan, Kentucky. They were talking about that town in Kentucky called Harlan, where there were a lot of feuds between families, where a lot of children, it seemed like a lot of sons were killed because there were a lot of shootouts, which seemed to stem from a lot of disputes between different families. In Harlan, they were talking about the Howards and the Turners, and how I believe the Howards, killed some cow that went on their property or something like that, and then the Turners didn't like it, or maybe it was the other way around. But all I know is what happened was they got in a fight, and one of them killed another one. And so I believe a relative went to the parents or went to the son and said, hey, this happened. And then they went and they killed that guy. And then it was a repeating cycle, and they kept killing each other. And they said that...
Remember the judge scene or the judge part where he's like, he was gonna kill one of the family members. Basically, one of the family members at one point was up for jail, and he's on trial or whatever. Definitely killed this guy, and someone else from his family just comes in holding guns. It's like, this trial is over, and then the judge just left, and then they just threw it all out.
No, but that's what happened. It's pretty interesting. It seems like, because it seemed like to me, listening to that chapter, the judges said, hey, we're going to postpone these trials until we have enough backup to take care of them, because they said they found something like 1,000 cases, murder cases, and there was just too much, and he couldn't take care of it all. That's a lot. And they said that wasn't including a lot of the violent acts against some of these people. Right? So that's crazy. And they said it wasn't just in Harlan, Kentucky. It was in a bunch of towns bordering some of the southern states. And what the author said is he said that if you look at the people who moved into those towns, if you look at the original immigrants, you'd see that they came from the outer lands of Scotland, of Ireland, and they came from an honor culture, right? In an honor culture, they all, they were like shepherds. They're like shepherds who, if you lose one of your herd, that's an insult to you. First of all, that's very damaging to you because your herd is your livelihood. Well, and then second of all, it's an insult.
Well, I got more that it was the difference between the two. It was because obviously there's two different types of subsistence, as far as farming, agriculture. It's you can grow crops or you can raise animals. And people that raise crops were a little more trusting because it took a zillion people. It takes a lot of people to harvest, and so you're very much working with people. You need to trust people. And the opposite is true for raising animals. I mean, really, it only takes a few people. You basically just feed them, and make sure they don't die. But it takes very many people to raise a lot. And so, but the animals themselves are much easier to take because you can just tie them together and take them all if you really wanted to. They're dumb, and so they were much more. They were wary of people because they first didn't work with people. The second didn't trust people because you could easily steal from them. It wasn't like someone's going to go harvest all the wheat, and if they did, it would be well, it doesn't even matter. It's oh, you harvested 10 feet. Oh, that was 10 cents or whatever, and you waste all your time. And the opposite's true. It's you take a whole cow. That's a whole cow. It's years and years of work and a lot of money and a lot of effort. You take the individual wheat. It's oh, that was cool. You can't even do anything with it.
Yeah, and they were saying that if someone's trying to steal the crops, you can steal individual crops, but you can't steal the whole field. That's exactly right. So it's more of an insult. And so it sounded like the Northerners, the people from northern areas of the United States, seemed to be more of those farmers, more of those trusting people. And the people in the South were more of those people who were sheep herders or any other kind of shepherd.
Yeah.
And they said that if you took one of those from the herd, yeah, it's a personal insult. So when they killed each other, when they had these feuds, they said it wasn't for money. It wasn't for any kind of value. It was a personal insult, which is where the honor comes into place. So I think the important thing they said about this was they led into how they try to test to see if that was still the case today.
Yeah, the
And
asshole thing.
yeah, and today being when they wrote this book. But yeah, right, they went to some schools and they was it a college? They go to a
Yeah, I went
college.
to like a college, and then it was just like, what was it? The dude was randomly in the hallway. I can't remember what reason they gave for him to be in the hallway.
Yeah. Well, they just said, someone would be in the hallway and then one of their guys that they planted would call him an asshole and they'd see what would happen. And then they had like this big bouncer dude who had played college football. He's a 6'5" tall dude, big dude who was a bouncer, and he would walk down the hallway. And the reason why they did that is because everyone stepped out of the way. They said everyone stepped out of the way. But they wanted to see how long it would take for them to step out of the way because it would kind of show how angry they were. So they said the Northerners, when they called him an asshole, most of them just laughed it off, said it was a joke, and they said you could tell they were diffusing their anger about someone calling them an asshole. And then I believe they said 9 seconds before they ran into the bouncer, they would step out on average. And then they said the Southerners, they said they took it more personally. They were pretty angry. And what happened was they didn't step away till about 5 or 4 seconds. And they said if they were really mad, it was 2 seconds. So that's pretty interesting. So it sounds like they're saying you look back those 200-300 years, 400 years, you look at your ancestors, where they were from, say they were from Ireland or they were from Scotland, and they were these shepherds and they took things personally. It's pretty incredible that can impact you today. It's pretty incredible that can impact your decisions. That's nothing I ever thought of, because we all think we're independent.
How many years back?
Yeah. Don't you think that? I honestly think, I sit there sometimes and I say, yeah, well, my ancestors might have done this, this, and this, but that's not me. I didn't do what my ancestors did. But according to what this guy's saying, which he's got a point, that probably goes back in your DNA.
Your ancestors have passed on.
Have they passed on, or are they living in you? Are they living in you?
That's a good lesson. Yeah. No, this one was interesting. I thought that was a good way of thinking about it. Just the sheep. I thought it was an interesting, like the sheep herder versus the agricultural farmer or crop farmer, whatever.
Yep.
I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it, just because that's very true. I mean, you have to distrust people, because people could really affect you greatly, and it's like you're very much a give an inch, give a mile. It's like you don't even want anybody to even come close to even messing with your stuff, because they do a little bit, it messes you up. You mess you up massively, instead of being a mild thing, and then you don't have to work with anybody, so you don't have to trust them anyways.
Yeah. It's a pretty good. So I'm happy you brought that up, because I didn't catch on to that. Because when I was listening to this, I was thinking, well, so where did those Northerners come from? But you're right. He did talk about they must have been more of the crop people. The more people were farmers, et cetera, and they were a little more trusting. It's pretty interesting. They're saying that it was one or the other. I mean, is it possible there could have been some other kind of professions
too? I mean, I would say there's a lot of other professions. I think he was just specifically honing into that specific historic profession, because you think a long time ago people did stuff in areas. So if you're from this specific city region, that's all anybody did. Was just, I mean, obviously there's a little bit of other industry, but even still kind of today, but that's a lot of what they did. It's like if it was possible to actually have animals, then you made animals there. Now they'd sell whole animals. It wasn't like they were butchering animals to then sell them to people, but they'd sell obviously the whole thing. But they'd still be kind of centralized. Whereas the opposite's true for agriculture and all that. There's whole parts of the Ukraine. It's that's all they do, and all these other countries. It's there's just only this one small band they can grow crops.
Yep.
America, we've actually been very good of a place to live, and that's why people live here, because you can grow crops everywhere. In Russia, you can only grow crops in the Ukraine. You can't even grow anything in the country. That is Russia.
It's pretty rough. Actually, so the one thing I'll say, and I'm gonna get a lot of flack for saying this, if anyone watches this, who cares? But global warming is a huge deal. Global warming is a huge issue. So I graduated geophysics from Berkeley, right? So I studied under those guys at UC Berkeley, which Berkeley is known for what it's known. I'm not going to go into what it's known for. Everyone knows what it's known for. It's a very smart school, great thinkers, and it's got all its other connections. So what I learned and what I studied actually is because we studied, what's it called? Paleoclimatology. Paleoclimatology is the studying of past climates, past weather systems to try to figure out what the future is going to do. And the biggest reason why you would study that is because right now, obviously, they're saying there's global warming and it's the temperature's going up. Yes, that's correct. Scientifically, global warming is a natural phenomenon. The sun shoots its rays into the earth. It goes through the cloud layer. It reflects off the earth's surface, hits the cloud. Some of it is sent back out into space, but some of it is also trapped within the earth. It reflects back off the clouds, and that's what causes global warming, is that reflection of the light, and the heat stays in. And when you have more particles, you've got all these I couldn't tell you. CO2 is obviously a big one, but you've got all these particles in the air that are caused from the burning of oil, the burning of coal, etc. It's causing a lot more reflection back into the earth. So global warming is increasing. That's correct, and it is a natural phenomenon. That's also correct. Where was I going with that?
Okay, I just have to stop you right here. So I was watching
what was I saying about
I just have to
that?
stop you right here. I was watching Alex Jones, and Alex Jones told it to me straight.
Yeah,
CO2
okay.
is good. That's why we started using electric cars, because CO2 is really good.
CO2
Now, why
is
do you
good.
think they keep pitching electric cars as being green? Not true. They get all the energy from coal, which creates more CO2. See, I was watching Alex Jones. That's what he said. He's like, CO2 is good. That's why they're trying to produce more CO2.
I heard him.
It's
I
actually
heard him say
building
that.
the-
That was on Joe Rogan, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that was hilarious.
Yeah, that was on Joe Rogan.
But he's not wrong about at least the electric cars actually having slightly a larger carbon footprint just based off how we, get power.
What was I talking about? Oh, I know I was talking about paleoclimatology. Well, because we were talking about Russia. We were talking about the crops in Russia.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing, and actually Alex Jones talked about this in that show too, which probably no one latched onto, because he was saying global warming was a good thing.
Yeah.
Which, on the one hand, it's melting ice caps. That is bad. However, you were talking about how Russia, there's only certain areas that are available for harvest. With global warming, as a matter of fact, there are certain areas in Russia, or certain areas that weren't fertile or able to be harvested. You can't plant any plants there, are now able to be harvested. There are certain areas now, because of global warming, that are now habitable for plants and whatnot. So that's pretty interesting, and no one really talks about that.
Yeah.
It's a give and take. Everything's in balance. Everything's a give and take. You've got very big negatives. If the ice caps keep melting, the water levels are going to rise, and you've got towns on the water that are probably going to go underwater. That could happen. Who knows what's going to happen? They keep telling me it's going to happen within 5-10 years. That was 5-10 years ago, so I don't know when it's going to happen. If it's going to happen,
people will figure it out. I mean, everybody's worried about all this. You know what's going to happen? I don't think it's BS, but all that's going to happen is we're going to start having issues, and then we're going to put a bunch of money into it, and then we're going to have science fix our problems.
Or you could be Elon Musk
doing that.
Or Elon Musk flying to Mars, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Was there
Mars
any
is
more of the chapter, or was it basically just like...
That's a quick one. This Harlan, Kentucky was a real quick one.
Yeah. It wasn't, I don't think, a short chapter or anything, but as far as in length, but it just didn't seem like it hit as many points.
It was only like 20 minutes. It was actually really short. That's all it talked about. It was more of a prelude into what they're talking about. Just saying that, along with your family and how you're raised concurrently, That's important. He said another part that's important because this is a start of part 2, which they must be talking about legacy coming from your ancestors.
Yeah.
So I know you've read it. I know you've read how it goes
and
on.
I
I'm
also
sure you know
read
how it
the
turns
next
on.
chapter on accident.
Yeah, don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Again,
Don't
but-
ruin it for me. But it sounds like they're leading into, hey, there's actually something that impacts your success that you would have never thought about. Your ancestors from 400 years ago, 500 years ago, they impact you. Believe it or not. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I still think, I mean, I don't know, at least how I always took it was it's just a mentality of like, well, because I'm, the people that are like really proud to be whoever they're from, like their culture and stuff, and they like look at that as one of the reasons why they're successful. I think that that's just a good mindset to have. Obviously, don't be arrogant and rude, but like in your own head, you can be like, well, I came from this, and that's what made me successful. Like, I come from this strong background, and this, that, whatever. And I think that can also just give you power, like just help you feel like there's other people have done it, and it's meant.
That gives you power. That's not what I think he's talking about. I think he's talking about.
Well, he's physically talking
stuff
about
you're
how
not
these people
in
in these
control of.
scenarios were more advantageous to do these things because of the
No. With the legacy stuff, he's saying where you come from is impacting you without your knowing. He's saying that you could have been the great grandson or granddaughter of a shepherd from Scotland, and that's why you are more easily angered. That's why you're quick to anger relative to someone who's from the north who came from a farming family way back then. And that's not anything you're in control of. So I think that's what he's leading into. That's what he was saying there.
Well, I mean, this is him like taking his own research on it. That's why like some of the stuff's like, well, yeah, he's saying, well, these two, I mean, well, yeah, they didn't know, but I don't think them knowing or not knowing is really the point. I try to look for it, especially in his book, because he's not giving you like a very specific thing. It's very much just his own thoughts, and that's why it's a good Discord for us. Because it's not a really good answer. So I don't know. Some of it I take it and I kind of do change it a little bit, but I try to make it a message that's like better for me, like my own kind of package. All of that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Dude, I know we're both yawning. It's 10:45 Pacific Standard Time. We got to call it tonight. I think we've discussed chapter 5 and 6. I think in the future on Sunday, we're going to have to go much earlier. We're going to be back on Tuesday to talk about chapters 7 and 8. I haven't looked into them yet, so I don't know what those are about, but I guarantee you I will in 2 days. And we're going to have a good time. Probably around 6 or 7 o'clock. Once we have a social media and all that stuff set up, if we come up with something like that, we'll send out little things saying when we're going to start doing these more often. And people are going to be able to plan more for it as we plan more for it. This is still kind of up in the air, right? I mean, we're still kind of playing around with stuff. So figure it out, and eventually it'll become much easier. 10,000 hours, we'll have it.
Oh yeah. We're in hour 8, so.
All right, Chrissy T, we're about done, man.
Yep. Thanks, Chrissy T.